What is going on, guys? Clint here. Welcome back to the channel, Co-Commerce. In this video, we're going to be creating this beautiful travel website in React.js, styled completely with Tailwind CSS. At the top here, you see we have a full screen navbar that we're going to be using. Pretty cool. Then down here, we have just like a grid masonry layout. We're going to be using CSS Grid throughout this entire build here, and a little bit of Flexbox. Nice little section here. And as we scroll down, we're going to have an image slider. As you can see, we can just cycle through our images and these buttons below. If you click on the button, it'll automatically drag you to the corresponding image there, like so. And I'm going to show you how whenever we add a new image, it's going to automatically generate a button down here. We're just going to map through our images and then a footer at the bottom. So if you want to see how I built this website in React.js styled with Tailwind CSS, then let's go ahead and get started. And you guys, just to show you, everything is, of course, 100% mobile responsive. As we shrink down to the mobile device width, you see everything displays beautifully as well, and our image slider there. So again, if you want to see how I built this in React.js style with Tailwind, then let's go ahead and get started here. So I'm already in VS Code here. I actually already in the working directory that I want to be in, just this folder by the name of Experience React Tailwind. So I'm going to go ahead and press the Control backtick button to open up my terminal here within VS Code. So since I'm already in the folder, what we need to do is just create a new React application. So we can do that by typing npx create-react-app. Now, if you want to name a new folder here, you could say, my app or whatever you want to do. But since we're already in the directory we want to be in, we can just say npx create react-app and then just a period there. And what that's going to do is just install React or create our React project within the directory that we're currently in. So this will only take a minute, you guys. All right, you guys, happy hacking. That means we are ready to go. Okay, so first off, let's go into our source folder here on the left that the Create React app created for us. So right off the bat, this app.css, the app.test, the logo.svg, report vitals, and the setup test. Let's go ahead and just remove these. We're going to delete them. We don't need them. They're kind of cluttering up some stuff for the purpose of this build. Okay, so next, what we want to do is install Tailwind CSS. Okay, so let's go over here. I'm going to create a new tab here. We're going to go to tailwindcss.com. Go ahead and click on the Get Started button, and we're looking for this framework guides here. So Next.js, Laravel, V, Nux. What we're looking for is Create React App. Should be down here at the bottom. Here it is right there. So the first step is to create our React project. We've already done that, so let's just move on to this one next. So I'm just going to copy that in, come back over here, we'll paste it there. Then the next thing, this npx tailwind init-p. Let's go ahead and click that, and we're going to paste it in there. Now what this is going to do is create this tailwind.config.js file, and that's pretty important because the next step, it actually wants us to add this string in here inside of our content array in this tailwind.config.js. So let's go ahead and copy that, and we'll just paste it in there like so. Okay, and we can close the tailwind.config file. We're done with that. And the final step here is just to add these Tailwind directives to our CSS or index.css file. So let's just copy that over, and we'll paste that in our index.css. We can actually just delete all of that. Now, you guys, we can actually still add some global styling in here, and we're going to do that right now before we even get started. So what we're going to say, and this is how you add some global styles with Tailwind. So what we can say is @layer base, and then we just open up our curly brackets and we can apply CSS. So what I'm going to do, I'm just kind of showing you how to do this. We're going to add most of our Tailwind CSS within our components, but this is how we add our global styling. And what I want to do is for our buttons, I'm going to add some styling for our buttons. So what I can say, and we're not using a class or an ID or anything. All I'm doing is grabbing the HTML element itself, the button. And what I'm going to say is apply, and then we can write our Tailwind. So I'm going to say border py2 for padding on the y-axis of 2, then px3 for padding on the x-axis of 3. I'm going to say rounded full, and what that's going to do is just give us some nice rounded buttons. And you guys, I'm going to talk through, if this is confusing, I'm going to talk through all of this. And by the way, if you see that little pop-up on the screen, that is a very nice plugin. I believe it's called Tailwind IntelliSense. If you're new to Tailwind, I recommend you download it for VS Code. It allows us to basically just get a preview of what the Tailwind is. So let's go ahead, and we're done with that index.css file, and we can go ahead and close this. By the way, you guys, if you have a lot of questions about Tailwind, you can just search in here, and it has a very, very nice documentation. It's really easy to figure out how to do a lot of things in there. Okay, so let's start off by, let's go ahead and start up our React server. I'm just going to type npm start. And what that's going to do is just spin up our development server here. Yes, I already have my demo here running. So what we want to do is, it should just give our nice React app here. We're getting some errors because we, excuse me, we delete, excuse me, we deleted a few files that, so what we're going to do is go ahead and take care of those errors. So in the app.js here, let's go inside of this div here. We're going to delete those. We can get rid of that class, and it's trying to import some things that we've already deleted. So we'll go ahead and remove those as well. And then let's look in our index.js. It's trying to import the report web vitals that we deleted, so we can remove that there. And that should clear up any of our errors. Okay, so, and you guys, if you've already started the server and you like create a new tab here to install Tailwind, make sure you restart your server. Once you install Tailwind, you have to restart your server, so be sure to do that as well. Okay, you guys, so what we're going to start off with, let's go ahead, since our background is kind of, or our navbar background is clear with white text, it'd be hard to see if we started off with that. So let's go ahead and start off with this background image here, fully responsive background image. We'll just call it a hero. And then next we'll come back and do our navbar. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off with our hero banner here. So I'm going to use like Pexels and Unsplash for all of the images. It's really, really great free stock images. So, so yeah, feel free to grab any of those. Okay, so let's move this down just a bit here. Now, let's go ahead and create in our source folder here, what I want to do is create a new folder. We'll call this components. Of course, this is where all of our components are going to live. We can close that, but app.js for now. So inside here, we're going to create a new component, and I'm going to call this hero.jsx. And let's go ahead and generate our functional component here with RAFCE. No more class-based components, you guys. Okay, so inside this hero, let's go ahead and in our app.js, we'll go ahead and import this, right? So we're going to import our hero banner so we can actually view it inside of our application. So what we're going to do is import, we'll say hero from, and we're looking into our components folder /hero.jsx, just like so. Okay, and then we can go ahead and use our hero in there. So let's go ahead and save. And if we look at our application, we can now see that our hero component is now showing in here with our text of hero. Okay, so let's go ahead and start writing some code and build out our hero background. Okay, so let's go in here, and first what we want to do is let's go ahead and add our image in here. So I'm going to say image here. Now for a source, I'm just going to go ahead and paste in this image here. Like I said, I got this from Pexels. You can grab one from Unsplash. Doesn't really matter. I'll give a little slash in there. Doesn't really matter. You can grab whatever you'd like here. So what I want to do, so for this outer div, we wanted this image to take up the full width and height of the screen, no matter the size of the screen. We want it to take up the full width and full height of the screen. So what I want to say here, I'm going to say class name, just like so. Then we can just write our Tailwind in here. So I want to say I have a width of 100%. How we do that in Tailwind, we say w-full. And as you can see, and this is that Tailwind IntelliSense, you guys, actually gives us a preview of the Tailwind and kind of shows you off to the side what that is. So w-full gives us a width of 100%. And then what we want to say is h-screen, and that is the same as saying width or height, 100 viewport heights. Okay, so that's what we want there. So now we need to give some images to our, so this is the parent container. Now for our image, we need to give some class names to that, so it takes up the full width and height of that parent div. So what I'm going to say here, I'm going to say top, and we're going to position this here. So we're going to say top 0. I'm going to say left 0, width full h screen. Then what we're going to say is object cover. and that means object fit cover. So what that does is makes the image the full width and height of the screen, no matter the dimensions, as you can see. So no matter the dimensions of this, it's going to be always be the full width and the whole height of the screen, and it scales perfectly. So there we have it, you guys. So next, I want to have a, I might add just a little bit of an overlay. As you can see, it's just a slight overlay. And let's go ahead and do that now here. So I'm going to go ahead and give a space underneath here. So for our overlay here, let's go ahead. We're going to put this just below the image. Okay. It's just going to be a self-closing div. So let's go ahead and say div here. And like I said, it can be self-closing. So we can just do that right there. Now inside of this div, we're going to give it a class name, and all this is going to be is just a kind of a dark or light black overlay. So what we can say is BG black, just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and give this a class of absolute. I'm going to say top 0, left 0, width full H screen. So it's taking up the entire parent container. And right now it's just going to be black. So I don't want it to be black completely because we're going to be able to see our image. So what we can do is kind of add a, if we put a slash after the color, we can add in a, as you see here, kind of like an alpha. So what we can say is, let's say 30, should give it a nice little tint. So the darker you go, the more it covers up. So I'm going to leave this at 30, just like so. Perfect. Okay, so next, what I want to do, we want to create a kind of a container for our text there. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So for our text here, I'm going to go ahead and close that down. So hopefully that gives you, you can see that a little bit better. So for our text here, we want to position this absolutely as well. So I'm going to create a div, and let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and add in all of my HTML in here first. So I'm going to create a div in there. Now inside this div, we're going to have another div, and that's going to contain a p tag that's going to say all inclusive, just like that. Now just below our p tag, we're going to have an h1. It's going to say private beaches. We'll say beaches and getaways. There we go. And then underneath that, we're going to have a p tag, and I'll just say lorem. We'll say lorem 20 to generate some text there. I think that'll be good. And you can add, that was a little, a quick way, a shortcut to add text. So if you just want some lorem text, you can say lorem and then a number after it. And whatever number you type will automatically generate that amount of words and kind of this lorem text here. So underneath that, let's create a button. And for our button, we'll just say reserve now. Okay, perfect. So we can't see that yet, kind of goes right below our image, but we're going to position this absolutely so it just sits right here on top of our image. So let's go down and we're going to find this parent div that's just below our overlay. Okay. Now for this div, what we're going to say here, we're going to say, let's give it a class name. And like I said, we want this to be positioned to absolute. I'm going to say top 0. I'm going to say width full, so width 100%, H full, so height of 100%. And I want this to display as flex. You can see it on the screen here. So we want it to display as flex. I'm going to say flex column. And then what I want to say is justify center, and then text white. And you guys, we're going to be adding in some media queries in here as well. All this in Tailwind. I'm going to show you how to do it. It's very, very easy. I love adding all of that in here. So, and as you can see, you guys, I'm pressing the Command B to toggle this sidebar as we entered in our global styling, and you can add in as much global styling as you want for, your H tags, all your header tags, of course, your buttons, your inputs, whatever you want to add. I was just kind of giving you an example how we can add global styles here. And as you can see, our button is already styled that way. And I like just do just like I said, base styling. So that way, if you want to make your button dark or light or with a transparent background, you can do so as well. So, okay, so back to our hero there. So we have this text white. That's perfect right there. So next, let's add some media queries here to this div right here. And we'll have that positioned how we want it. So let's go ahead and give a class name here. I want to say anything above medium, okay? And Tailwind, we're doing a mobile first approach. So what we can say is anything above this medium breakpoint, I want it to be left 10%. Now, you can't just write 10% here because that's not a class of Tailwind. But what you can do, if you want to give some custom values in Tailwind, you can just open up some curly brackets, and then you can add in 10%, 20%, or pixels, any type of custom values inside of your brackets with Tailwind. And let's go ahead and give this a max width, kind of a container. Okay, so we'll say a max width. And again, I'm using my brackets so I can add in some custom values. I'm going to say 1100 pixels. And then I'm going to say margin auto. Again, I want to position this absolute, and P-4 is a padding of 1 rem. So, and as you can see, if we hover on that, we get that 1 rem. So Tailwind counts in multiples of 4. So if you said P-2, that would be 0.5 rem, which is 8 pixels. Or you can say P-8 would actually be 2 rem, and it counts. You can count everything up as high as you want. So let's go ahead and open this up. And as you can see, we have this nice margin auto. It's kind of positioned nice there in the middle of the screen. And as we shrink down, we should hit our media queries here. Where's our breakpoint? Looks like that was it there. Boom. There's our there's our breakpoint right there. So as you can see, everything is working properly. So next, for our p tag, I don't think we need to style that. Let's go ahead and install our h1s. And again, you could be doing this in the index.css, giving some global styles to all our header tags, but I'm just kind of showing you how to do everything here. So let's just say font bold. And obviously that makes the font bold there. And what we can write, I want it to increase the size of the text. So I'm going to say text. I'm going to say 5XL. So you can say text XL, text 2XL, 3XL, 4XL. I'm going to say 5XL. And then anything above the medium breakpoint, I want to say text 7XL. We're not going to see a change right now because we're not above the medium breakpoint. I'm going to say drop shadow 2XL. And that's going to give a little, look at all that, do you guys? You get all this styling just by writing drop shadow 2XL. That's why I love Tailwind. Okay, so, and this is how the media queries work again. And you guys, you can change the SM for small, I believe is 640. Yes, as we hover here, there's that in Tailwind IntelliSense again. You can see 768 for pixels. If you go into the, I think it is the tailwind.config file, you can actually change the breakpoints in here if you want. But you know, this is fine. I'm just, if you really want to get into it, you can actually change the breakpoints. So right now we're at text 5XL. We should bump it up. There's our breakpoint right there. You can see it jumps to 7XL. So there we have it, you guys. Now next, for this p tag, let's go ahead and give some class to that. And what we're going to say, I want to say max width of, I'm going to give a custom value here, 600 pixels, drop shadow, we'll say 2XL. PY2 is going to be padding of just 4 rem on the top and bottom, and text XL to just beef it up a little bit there. Okay. And then next, let's go down to our button. And you guys, we already have, you know, some global styling on our button, but that's why I like to give just like the base global styling. And then I can go in and add, custom styles on top of this button. Okay. So what I want to say for this particular button, I want to say BG white. And this just makes it easier, you guys, to customize all your buttons. So text black is going to make the text black, and we already have it rounded. So that's all we need to do now. Let me see if I have any other, see how that's looking. Yeah, that looks good there. So that's it, you guys. Perfect right there. That's looking good. Perfect, you guys. So there you have it, you guys. That is the styling for our hero background. Okay. And everything, it is completely fluid. And look at that, you guys, completely mobile responsive. That looks great. That's how easy it is to write CSS with Tailwind within React. Okay. So next, what I want to do, let's go ahead and go into our components here, and let's create our navbar next. We're going to create this fully responsive navbar. In fact, actually, there's we're not going to display any text. This is just a full screen navbar there. So, and like I said, it shows up on full screens, and we're going to be disabling the scroll. Notice I'm trying to scroll right now and I can't do that. I'm going to show you how to disable that within React and Tailwind. Okay. So let's go in here next and create our new component, our navbar. We're going to do our navbar now. So we're going to create a new component here. I'm going to call it navbar.jsx. Okay. RFCE is going to get our functional component here. And let's just go ahead and import our navbar here. So we're going to say navbar. There we go. And we can just copy that down. Sorry, we'll change this one up here. So we'll say navbar, just like so. Okay. So there you can see we have our navbar. Perfect. So next, let's go into our navbar code here. And we're going to be using React icon here. This is the icon right here. We're going to get that from npx, or we're going to use that from React icons. Sorry. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and just write out our code here. So we're going to be using useState to manage the state of our navbar, whether or not it's displaying on the screen or not. So let's go ahead and write some code in here. So we have an H1, okay, and that's just going to be experiences. And you can see I have our experiences there. So next, what we're going to have here, so let's go, we're going to have our icon. So let's just go, let's go ahead and install React icons. So I'm going to look for React icons, just like so. React icons, let's open this up a bit. Awesome package. I use this all the time. So what we're going to be looking for, if you just search menu, these are all the different menu buttons you can see. So really have a ton of selection there. So what we want to do here, let's just go ahead and we need to close our server down. What we're going to type, we're going to say npm I react-icons, if I can spell it correctly, --save, okay? And what that's going to do is just install the React icons package. So you notice some of these start with AI, some BS, FC. So I'm going to show you how we can install these. Let's go ahead and start our server back up with npm start. So what we're going to use is hi menu alt 3, just like so. Okay, and let's go ahead and import this. I'm going to say import 8. We're going to put this in curly brackets, AI menu alt 3 from, we're looking for React-icons. Now we have to put whatever, notice I said some start with HI, some start with LI, some with FA. You have to import these on separate lines. You can group them together with a comma there, but if they have they start with different text there, you have to group that in there as well. So what we can say here, let's go ahead and let's give this a size property here and put this in some curly brackets. I'm going to say a size of 25. Okay. So let's go ahead and start our server there so we can see our icon. We should be able to see our icon up here to the right. So there it is, you guys. We have that little 3 bars, and the third bar is kind of a miniature one off to the side. So we can go ahead and close the React icons, you guys. Really love that React package there. So next, what we want to do, let's go ahead and create a div here. This is going to be a div for our nav, okay? And we're actually just going to hide this off the screen, but we'll come back to that in a minute. We'll have an unordered list, and for our list items, I'm going to say home. Then I'm going to copy this down a few times. So the next one is going to be destinations. Then we're going to have a reservations, and these actually aren't going to be hooked up to anything. Amenities, just like that, and then rooms. Okay, and that's all the HTML that we're going to be using, or JSX, whatever you want to say. That's all the JSX we're going to be using. So let's go ahead and style this thing. Okay, so what we want this bar to, so it's going to kind of be an overlay, right? And that's why we did the hero banner first, because this is white text and you wouldn't be able to see it if we didn't do it this way. So let's go ahead and give this a class. So we're on the parent div here, so I want to give it a class name, and I want this to display absolute. I'm going to say width full. I want it to display as flex. You can see it there, flex. I want to say justify between. We'll say P-4 to give it a little bit of padding, and then items center. Okay, there we have it there. Perfect. So, and we're going to hide this off the screen. Remember, don't worry about that. So let's go ahead and target this H1, give it a class name. I'm going to say text white. I want to say font bold, text 2XL, we'll say Z-20, and this is just the Z index. So perfect. That's what we want right there. And let's target our React icon next. So I'm going to say class name, and I'm going to say Z20 text white, and we'll say cursor pointer. So whenever we hover it, we'll get the little hand there. Okay, perfect. So next, what I want to target, let's go down here. Let's do our menu next. So let's go ahead and display this thing. Let's display this off the screen. So I'm going to say class name here. Or you know what? Let's go ahead and display it on the screen. So this is what it's going to look like whenever we're going to add in some state in here, but let's go ahead and style our menus, how it's going to look basically just like that right there. Okay. So what we're going to say here, we're going to position this as fixed. Okay. And I want to say text gray 300. I'm going to say left 0, top 0, and we can give these dimensions there because it is fixed. We'll say width full, a height of screen, which is 100% or 100 viewport heights. I'm going to say BG black. Okay. And I'm going to give it an alpha of 90. There we go. So you can kind of still see that. In fact, if you want to go a little bit lighter, you can. I'm just going to leave it as 90 for now. PX 4, padding on the x-axis of 4, which is 1 rem. We'll say PY 7 flex column. There we go. And I'm going to say Z-10 to give it a Z index. And so you can, as you can see, when we change that Z index, but this is still on top, but we don't want that. So all we have to do is, again, raise the Z index of our nav bar. And that's what we need to do there. Okay. So perfect. That's what we want there, you guys. And again, if you didn't add this Z index, same with our menu, as you can see, if you didn't add the Z index here above the Z index of this black overlay, then you wouldn't be able to see that. And the same goes for this H1 as well. Again, if you take that away, then as you can see, it's going to be behind our nav bar or behind our mobile viewing here. So now let's go ahead and style our H1, which is all our text here, because we want that to display in the middle of the screen. So let's go ahead and give this a class name, and we want it to display a flex. I'm going to say flex column, and then I want it to display as fixed, and I'm going to say text gray 300. I'm going to say left 0, top 0. Then let's say width full, because we want to display right in the middle of the screen. We'll say H screen, and then sorry, take this away there. Text. We just need. Let's get rid of all this here. Sorry. I'm going to say width full, H full there, item center, and justify center. So we want this to be in the middle of the screen. Sorry about that, you guys. So with justify center, item center, we now have it in the middle of the screen. Now, for our list items, and again, you guys, you can put this inside of your global styling inside the index.css if you want, but you know, this is a very small application, so there's not really much need to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and add styles here. And all I did, you guys, was hold down the option button. That allows us to type on multiple lines at the same time. So kind of neat little trick there. So let's say font bold. I'm going to give this text of 3XL. And I'm going to say padding of 8, which is just 2 rem on the left and right. So that is it, you guys, right there. Perfect. And that is our nav bar. Now, we can't toggle it yet, but let's go ahead and add that in there right now with some state. So with the useState hook, we're going to be able to toggle the state of our navbar. So we need to import useState here at the top. And what we're going to do, we're just going to add our state in just below our navbar component here. Okay. So let's go ahead and we'll say right here, what we can say is const. Now you can use whatever values you want. I'm just going to say nav and set nav, okay, and is equal to use state. And by default, I just want to set this as false, okay. Now we're going to use ternary operators in here on our div to basically display whether or not our navbar is to be shown or not. So let's go ahead and for this div right here, I'm going to go ahead and copy all these styles here, okay. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. And instead of the quotes there, what we're going to use are some curly brackets. And actually, we can write a ternary operator within here. So what we can say, if nav is true, display this, use this CSS, else we're going to add this CSS, this Tailwind. So if the nav is true, what I want to say, we want to display this. And it's giving us an error because we don't have any other values. Or we want to display this over here. So right now, our menu is off the screen. So if the nav is true, which it is actually set to false right now, if it's set to true, then we want to display absolute. We'll say top 0. And as you can see, it's already on the screen. Top 0, we'll say H screen. And we'll say left. We're going to hide it off the screen. We'll use our bracket here, negative 100%, so it's completely off screen. And let's give some, we're going to say ease in, duration 500. Just get a nice little transition, excuse me. And we'll just do that right there. So let's go ahead and save that so it gets nice and formatted, and let's see how this works here. So we need to add an on-click event here for our navbar function there. So, but as you can see right now, our nav is currently set to false. And if nav is true, it's going to display the set of styles right here. And if the nav is false, or if it's true, display this, else display this right here. So if you can see If we change this to true, we should be able to see our nav bar is now on the screen. But by default, we want it to display as false, right? So let's go ahead and add a function here to handle the state of our nav bar. Okay, so we'll just do that right below our state there. So what we can say is const. You can call this whatever you'd want. It makes sense to call it handle nav, and we'll just make this an arrow function here. Now inside here, what we can do is just set the nav to its opposite state. So what we can just say is just give it an exclamation mark. And right now, instead of just, if you set this to true, then every time you click the button, it would just set to true. So what we can say, just set nav. And what that's going to do is just set it to its opposite state. Now we need to add an on-click event to this button here. And that way, whenever we click, it actually runs our function. So we can just add that in right here. We'll say on-click. And again, use camel case and using camel case here in React. Okay, so on click, we want to run this handle nav function. Okay, so now whenever we click this, it should toggle our nav bar. There we go. So there you have it, you guys. Everything is working properly. Now, let's add in some more duration here because it slides off kind of nice, but it just kind of appears on the screen. So let's add in, we'll say ease in duration of 300. Let's see how that works. And let's see. Boom, and it slides in. So there you have it, you guys. There is our mobile nav bar. Perfect, perfect. So as you can see, we can still kind of scroll a little bit, and we don't want to be able to scroll, even though there's no components down here, we don't want to be able to scroll even that right there. If we had more components below this, like we do here, then we'd be able to scroll, and we don't want that. So what we can do, matter of fact, I might just, yeah, let's go ahead and handle that right now. I was going to kind of show you what it could happen when we come back to it, but let's just go ahead and handle that right now. So for our inside of our nav bar here, what we want to say inside of our nav bar, inside of our function. So what all we're going to do is just change the CSS overflow property. Okay, so what we're going to say is if nav is not its current value, what we can say is document. And this is how we can access the body in our JavaScript here. So we'll say document.body.style overflow, and that's the style we're looking for. We're going to set it to hidden, okay? Else, then we'll just say document.body.style overflow. We want to set this to scroll. Okay. There we go. So now, as you can see, let's go ahead. If this is active, as you can see, I'm trying to scroll right now, but we're not getting anything. And again, if we just comment that out, you can see we should be able to scroll a little bit. Let's give it a little refresh. Should be able to scroll, not very much, but now you can see it still moves. Okay. So comment that back in. And now if we give it a refresh, whenever this is, we can still move it. Whenever this is active, we cannot move it at all. Okay. All right. So there you have you guys. There is our nav bar. We have this scrolling property set up nice. React icons, everything is looking beautiful. So next, what we want to do, let's go ahead and add in this little section right here. Nice little grid section there. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So we're going to import, see, let's create let's call this offers here. So I'm going to toggle this sidebar with Command B. I'm on a Mac again. So a new file, and I'm going to call this offers.jsx. And RAFCE is going to get our functional component. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to import offers from, and again, that's in the components folder, offers.jsx. There we go. And we're just going to import offers. There we go. Okay. So next, let's go into our offers here. And as you can see, there's our component there at the bottom. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so what we want to have here, we're going to have a P tag, and this one's going to say booking incentives. And I'm just going to copy this down a couple times. We'll say competitive rates. We'll say book with, well, I would say book with flexibility. And you could just say uppercase If you want to not, add in some styling that way, that's fine too. Trip insurance. So there you can see, there we have it down there. So let's go ahead and style this. It's going to be really, really simple. We just want to have that bold. It's going to be displayed as flex as well. So let's go ahead and what we can say. I'm going to say class name, and this is we're going to give this a container. We're going to give this a container because right now it should be kind of off the screen, and we're going to give that. So let's go ahead and say max width of, again, we're going to use our brackets here, so our custom values. I'm going to say 900 pixels, margin auto, and we'll say px4, so padding on the x-axis of 1 rem, and then we'll say padding on the y-axis of, whoops, what happened there? Go back to here. Padding on the y-axis, sorry, of 12, which is just 3 rem, because again, it goes in multiples of 4, and if we hover, we can see that. So I'm going to say flex, we'll say flex wrap, and then justify between. So there you have it, you guys. As we open it up, we can do that as well. And again, if you want to look at this on an actual true mobile device, we can just say, there it is, looking like on an iPhone XR. Again, hey, look at that navbar, looking good, you guys. Smash the like button if you feel like you're getting some value out of this. And there we have our values on there. So perfect. So I'm just going to close that. Now let's go ahead and give our p tags just a little bit of styling. So I'm going to hold down this option button again on a Mac so we can type multiple places here. We'll give it a class name, and let's say text large. And as you can see, that's 1.125 rm or 18 pixels. Font bold, let's say text gray 700. And go ahead and save. There you have it, you guys. Fully responsive there. Perfect. And it was within our 900 pixel container there that we did. Okay. All right, you guys. So next what we want to do, let's add we'll do this component next using this grid masonry layout. Very, very nice. I love the grid layout. It's awesome to use. So let's do that right here next. I'm going to close this navbar here, close all this stuff that we're not going to be needing. And we'll say, was this plan? We'll just do this, plan your next trip. We'll call that plan. So let's go ahead and open this up. New component here, you guys. We'll say plan.jsx, RAFCE, and let's go ahead and import this. We'll say plan, just like so. And we want to import plan from components, plan.jsx. Okay. So there you see our plan down there. Perfect. So for our plan, it's going to be pretty fun. Like I said, I love using the grid layout. Super, super awesome. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to be using some Unsplash images here. I love Unsplash. I love Pexels. Really, really great to use. They're really, really great to use all their free stock images. So, okay. So what we want to do here, I'm going to have, let's see, a div here. Then we're going to have another div, and inside our div, we're going to have, these 5 images. Okay. So, and then we're going to have a right side. So we're going to have, I'm going to say image, give it a little slash here so React doesn't give us any issues there. And I'm going to paste that in there. And I'm just going to copy this down, you guys. So 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now we have our 5 images. And I'm going to go ahead and, let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and add in these, make sure they're different images. And again, if you want to go to Pexels, if you want to go to Unsplash, feel free to grab images that you think are cool, or any images that you like. These are just the ones I picked out. By the way, guys, smash the like button if you feel like you're getting some value out of that. Much appreciated. And we'll paste this in here. And let's see here. Let's say this is going to be our 4th image. Actually, I'm going to place that in here. So we are our 3rd, and this is going to be the 4th image next here. And we'll do the last image. So, and you can see these off to the bottom. As you can see, we're getting all different images in there. And you guys, the sizing of these images is not going to matter. I'm going to show you with CSS, with Tailwind, actually how we're going to actually resize these images. So it doesn't matter if they're landscape or vertical, does not matter. So now we have all different images in here, you see, guys. So let's go ahead and style this thing. So these are actually the left side. In fact, if we open this up, it's going to have, we're using grid here. So this is the left side right there. So next we're going to have that HTML there on the right. So let's go ahead and add that in next here. So just below that div, and we'll just even add in a comment here. We'll say left side, just like that. And then we can say right side, just to kind of hopefully make that a little bit easier to follow along. So we'll have a div over here that we're going to have an H3, and we'll just say plan your next trip. There we go. And let's give this a p tag. We'll say lorem 10. There you go. So I have some text in there. And then below this p tag, we're going to give it another p tag. We'll say lorem 30. Let's go ahead and save. And below that p tag, we're going to have one more div. And this is going to hold our buttons. So we'll have a button here, and we'll say learn more, and we'll just have another button here that says book your trip. There you go. Okay, so they're all our images that we're going to style. And then as you can see, our buttons, of course, are already have those baseline styles. And again, you notice that we use that H3 there, and it just looks like a regular p tag. That is what Tailwind does, you guys. It gives you these baseline styles. So if you're wondering why all of your header tags look like just p tags, that is the reason there. Okay, so next, what we want to do, let's go ahead and give a max width here for our div. So what we're going to say, whoops, not callback, we'll say last class name. So what we're going to say is max width, and we'll say 1100, we'll say 1400, we'll say 1400 pixels there. We'll say margin auto py of 16, so padding on the y-axis top and bottom, then px of 4, and we want this to display as grid. Then anything, we're going to use a lot of media queries in here, anything above the large breakpoint here, which I believe is 1024. Again, you can change these in your if you want to in your Tailwind file. So anything above the large breakpoint, we want to display as grid. Columns 2, so just 2 columns, and then we can just give a gap of 4, so a gap of 1 rem. So if we open this up, the images should be on one side and our text should be on the other, and we have our nice container. There we go. There we have it, you guys. Perfect. So as you can see, that is what we want there. So next, let's go ahead and add in the grid section, this masonry grid, okay, and then we'll do the text. So for our images here, what we want these to, we're going to use grid. So let's just say class name display grid. We'll say grid columns 2, because we want 2 column, and then I'm going to use 6 rows. So as you can see, we have our 2 columns there, and I'm going to use 6 rows for our grid. So we'll say grid rows dash 6, and I want a height for this. I'm going to say height. I'm going to use a custom value. I want to say 80 viewport heights, okay? So there we have it, you guys. Those are our images. Now, we're going to go ahead and add a class name to each of these images. So and they're all going to have a few of the same classes, and then we're just going to have them span different areas. So again, holding down the option button so we can add type on multiple lines. So first off, they're all going to be object cover. They're all going to have a width of full, a height of full, and they're all going to have a padding of 2, which is just 8 pixels there. So there you have it, you guys. Now we're going to come in here and give each image a span to kind of span across our grid section here. Okay. So, and when it's on a smaller screen, it's going to look like this right there. So let's go ahead and give this some spans. So for our first one, okay, so for our first one here, I'm going to say row span 3. There it goes right there. And for the next one, I want it to say row span 2. Now there you have it there. See, as you can see, spanning across different rows. And this one, I want to say row span 2 as well. And then this second to last one, I'm going to say row span 3. And this very last one, I'm going to say row span 2. So there you have it, you guys. Look at that. That's how easy it is to use a grid masonry layout in Tailwind CSS. So that looks really, really great. Very, very nice. And you can add in some more media queries if you want, but I think that is looking pretty good right there. And as you can see, the images are fluid there. So everything is displaying perfectly. So next, let's style this right side of the screen whenever we're on these larger devices. Then again, mobile, it just kind of stacks up. So we have this label down here at the right side. So let's go ahead and give this class name here. And for this here, I'm going to display flex column. I'm going to say height 100%. So H full. I'm going to say justify center. Okay. And again, this H3, we'll tackle that next. Like I said, I didn't add any global styling for our header tags, which would be probably a good idea to do, especially on larger projects. But what I want to say is text 5XL, then anything above the medium breakpoint, I want it to be text 6XL, and let's just go ahead and make it font bold. So now, again, whenever we hit that medium breakpoint, I believe it's 768, it should bump up a little bit. So, hey, there you go. You can see it increases a little bit there. There it is. Perfect, perfect. Okay, so next, let's grab our p tags here. So I'm going to give this a class name, and I want this to be text 2XL, and we'll say py of 6. So there it is right there. Perfect, perfect. And this p tag, we'll give it a class name as well. We'll say we'll just say padding bottom of 6 to give it a little bit of padding below our buttons. And again, our buttons already have some baseline styles, so let's just go ahead and add on a little bit more. So for this one here, for this top button, or the button on the left, what we'll say is border black. There it is. And then we'll say margin right of 4. Then let's give it a hover effect, and we can just add a hover class there. So hover, then we're going to use the colon, we'll say shadow XL. So let's see here. Whenever we hover, you can actually see a little shadow. That's how easy it is to do that with Tailwind, you guys. So this next one, let's do the same. We'll say BG black. And this is why I like to give just kind of the baseline styles and then kind of style them up a little bit left. Whoops. So right, border black. This is why I like to give the baseline styles there, and then just kind of add in the custom styles or the extra styles here. So shadow XL. So there it is, you guys. So look at that hover effect on both of them. And you can change this to medium XL. You can make the shadows more drastic if you'd like, however you'd want to do it. So there you have it, you guys. Let's open this up on full screen. Everything is fully responsive. Look at that, you guys. Smash the like button if you feel like you're getting some value out of this. Notice we can't scroll with our navbar. Perfect. Everything is looking good. So, and guys, if you want to take this, make this navbar, like sticky, so it kind of stays at the top, feel free to do that as well. So, all right, you guys. So next, what are we doing here next? We have this, again, a grid layout here with this kind of rooms component, as we can say, to get some nice interior views of the rooms. Kind of cool how we give this light blue background that kind of like overlays there. So let's go ahead and do that one next. I'm going to shrink that down. So Command B, let's toggle that sidebar. So next component, what I'm going to call this is rooms.jsx. RAFCE, get our functional component in here. And again, we're just going to put this below our plans here. So we'll say rooms, just like that. And we'll import rooms from our components folder / rooms.jsx. Okay. So there we have our rooms. You can see down there. Perfect. Now let's go in and add in our some code here. We'll add in all our JSX. Okay. So, and again, we're going to be using all these unsplash images. Again, feel free to use whatever you'd like to, whatever you'd like to use, but I like to use Unsplash. They have a lot of really great stock images. That's where I get most of my images. So we have an outer div there, and then we're going to have another div in here. Then we're going to have an H3. I'm going to say fine interior rooms, just like that. And then let's add a p tag. We'll say lorem 15. There we go. So there we have our lorem text in there. So just below this div, we're going to have another div here, and this is going to be a grid. This is going to be our grid in here, and this is where we're going to just give a space there so it's easier to read. This is where all of our images are going to be, and we're just having, I think we're just going to do 3 images. Yeah, just those 3 images. So let's go ahead and say image. Give this an alt right there. And I'm going to copy this down a couple times. So in here, I'm just going to paste in this first one there. And again, feel free to use whatever images you would like to use. I'm going to paste this in here as well. And then for our final image here. Okay. So there we have it. There's our 3 images. Okay. So let's go ahead and give that a save. Now we're actually done with our HTML portion here, or the JSX portion. So let's go ahead and style this thing here. And that's kind of how I like to do it, you guys. Sometimes I write in all the, in fact, actually, when I'm building it out, I usually just write in the styling as I go. But I feel like that could be a little bit harder to follow along for you guys. So sometimes it's easier to get the HTML portion on here and then style it. So let's give it a class name here, this parent div here. And again, we want a max width, kind of using our container. We'll say 1400 pixels. And you guys, you could actually put your container into like a component, or there's really many different ways to do this. So I'm gonna give this a height of 500 pixels. Again, custom values with our brackets here. I'm gonna say BG blue 100, MX auto, margin y-axis of 20, padding on the top of 16. Now we're going to add in some breakpoints here. So anything above the large breakpoint, I'm going to say margin bottom of 20%. Anything above the medium breakpoint, we'll say margin bottom 35%. And then PX4, padding on the x-axis 4. We want this to display as grid. Anything above large, we'll say grid columns 3, then a gap of 4. So let's go ahead and save that. So as you can see, we already have this displaying stacks up. There we go. Perfect. So just with that line of code there, you can see our blue background there. Everything looks good. Okay, so next, what we're going to grab is this next div here. And this div is just kind of a container for this header tag and this p tag there. So what we're going to say is give this a class name, and we want to say anything above the large breakpoint top, we'll say top 20. There we go. We want this to display as a relative. Anything above the large breakpoint, also we want to say column span 1. And then we'll just say by default column span 2. So minimum width mobile first approach with Tailwind. So like I said, column span 2 is going to apply on the minimum width, and then anything as we add breakpoints there or media queries, that will come next. So there we have it, you guys, as we shrink down. Perfect. There you have it. Perfect. All right. So next, let's go in, and again, we'll make this header tag, give this H tag. We'll say text to XL, font bold. Looks good there. For this p tag, we'll say padding top 4. There we go. Okay. Now for our images here, again, we're going to be using grid for this. So let's give this a class name. We'll display grid columns 2, column span 2, and then we'll say gap 2. There it is right there, you guys. Perfect. Now we want the image on the bottom here to display the full height over there on the right. So that looks good there. So for this here, for our images, we'll say, let's give them all class names here. I'm all about saving time there. So class name, they're all going to be object, cover, not contain, object, cover, width full, height full. Now for this last one, or we can just say, we'll just do this second one here. We'll just say, we'll put that at the beginning here. We'll say row span 2. And there you have it, you guys. Look at that. That is awesome right there. So let's make sure this thing is displaying correctly on all our media queries hit. Well, hey, there you go. Look at that. Awesome. You guys smash the like button if you feel like you're getting some value out of this. Everything is looking beautiful. There you go. And everything is mobile responsive as it shrinks down. Perfect. All right, you guys. All right. So next, let's move on to our next component here, which is this slider. How about that? So look at that slider. And again, it is going to be responsive. There you go. And these buttons, you can click on the buttons as well and skip to that corresponding slide. And like I said, as you add in more images, it will add in more buttons automatically because we're just mapping through everything. So let's do this image slider right now. Okay, so this is going to be fun. So Command B, let's get this sidebar open and let's get a new component here. And I'm going to call this one, we'll say image slider.jsx. Okay. So our AFCE is going to generate our functional component here. And okay, let's go ahead and close this rooms.jsx, this plan.jsx. We don't need that. And let's import this here. So we'll say import, it's going to be our image slider from components.jsx. Okay. And we'll put that in there right there like so. Perfect. Okay, so let's close that. And if we scroll down, we can see our little image slider component down there at the bottom. Okay, so let's go ahead and what I'm going to do is actually add in our slides here. So let's go ahead and paste that in here, or I'm going to paste it in here. I'll say const slides, and what it is just an array of objects there. So as you can see, each object in our array has a URL and then also a title as well. So, and these are just random images from Unsplash. Okay, so feel free to use any of them that you'd like. And I'm going to show you how we can actually add more images, and you're going to be able to loop through those as well. So let's go ahead and jump down here to the actual JSX code here. So inside this image slider right here, what we're going to want here, let's go ahead and give this a class name. Okay, and we'll say max width of, we'll say 1400 pixels. And there we go, 1400 pixels. There we go. And we'll give this a height of 500. What is going on? A height of 580 pixels. And we'll say width, full, margin, auto, PY, padding on the Y-axis of 16, then PX of 4. And we want this to be position of relative there, okay? So next, this is going to be a div here, and this is actually our image, okay? So this is how we're going to display our images on the screen. So for this image, it's just going to be an empty div, but we're just going to give it a style, okay? And we're using 2 curly brackets, and what we're going to say is background image, okay? And our background image, we're going to use backticks, and it's going to be URL, and then we're going to use a template literal, okay? So we already have our slides up here. So for our slides here, what we're going to say is, we can say slides, and then what we're going to say is, for now, I'll just say grab the first object in the array, and we can't see anything yet because it's grabbing the object, and we actually need the object URL. So what we can say is just object.url, and then we need to add in some class names as well. Okay, so what we'll say, let's give this a class name, and we'll say width full, and once we give it the width and the height, we'll say rounded to XL, let's say BG center, BG cover, and we'll give it a transition of 500. So let's go ahead and save that. Now, yes, there it is. You can see your image. Now it's hard coded in just the first object of our array there, which is lobster. So if we change this to 1, we should see the sushi. If we change it to 2, we'll see the pasta. If we change it to 3, we'll see the salmon there. So I'm just going to change it back to 1. And what we're going to do, we're actually going to make this to where we can cycle through the current index of our state. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish up the JSX here. And so below this, let's add in some arrows here. So I'm going to have we'll say a left arrow, copy this down, just a few notes for you guys, and we'll say a right arrow. Now for this div here, what I'm going to have is we'll say BS chevron compact left, just like so. And we're going to get an error there because we actually need to import this from React icons. So I'm going to say import from React-icons, and this one's going to be BS. Now we're going to do the same thing, but this one's going to be, instead of left, it's going to be a right. Okay. Whoops. It's going to be right. And let's go back down here. So if we scroll down, you can see there is our left one. So let's just copy this. And instead of the left, we want this one to be right. Okay. And whoops, need to make that capitalized. Now let's add a parent container here, or a class name here. And actually, I'm going to add these are basically going to be the same with a small exception of where they're positioned. So let's just give this a class name here. We want these to be positioned absolute. I want it at the top of, we use our brackets here, 50%. We're going to say translate x 0, translate on the y-axis of, we'll say negative 50%. I'm going to say left 5, text 2XL, rounded full, P-2 for a padding of 2. And then we'll say BG black. I'm going to give it an alpha of 20, text white, and we'll say cursor pointer. Okay, there we go. Okay, so there we have it. Now, see, they're both positioned on the left. We just have to change this over to the right. Now that one will be positioned over there. So I'm going to give a size property to both of these here. I'm going to say size, and let's just say 30. There we go. Beefed them up a little bit. Now, I don't actually want this opacity to show. I want the arrow to show, but not this black opacity until I hover on the parent div there, this parent image. So how do we do that? What we're going to say here, we actually need to add a group class here. So we're going to add that just right here after relative. We'll say group. Then what we can say on our, where's our black here? Right here on our black with our alpha 20. I'm going to type in on both lines here. What we'll say is, we want this to have a hover selector first. So we'll say hover, but we'll say, because right now if we hover on it specifically, it shows up, but I actually want it to show up whenever we hover on the parent element. So what we can say here is, all we have to say is group for our group up there. So we'll just say group, just like that, group dash hover. So now whenever we hover over this image, as you can see, we have this nice effect there. Perfect. So they don't actually work yet. So let's go ahead and set this up so we can actually cycle through and like loop through our images and actually make this an image slider. So let's come up here. We'll go just below this array here. So we need to set a way to check our current index of our images. Okay. So what we're going to say is we'll say const, we'll say current index. I need to set the current index. We'll just have this equal to useState of 0 by default. Oh, we need to import this useState hook. So we'll say useState, just like that. Okay. Where were we? Here we are. So we need a way to go to a previous slide. And then as well, we want to jump through to the next slide. So what we'll say const prev slide here. Just going to be an arrow function, not taking in any arguments there. And this one, instead of previous, this one's going to be next slide. Now let's go ahead and hook up our buttons. So on our React icons there, I'm going to give an on click to this one. And whenever we click this one here, what we want to run here is just the previous slide, and then we'll do the next slide as well. So we'll just say previous slide. Then again, on this one, on click, we want this one to go to the next slide. So let's go ahead and we already created these functions, but let's actually put our logic in here. So to go to the previous slide, we need to basically find the current index. So we'll say const is first slide, and that's going to be equal to the current index. If it is equal to 0, then that's going to be the first slide. And then we'll say const new index equal to, it's just going to be a ternary operator here. So we'll say is first slide. If this is true, then we'll say slides.length -1, else current index -1. And then we need to set the current index to this new index that we're determining. So let's go ahead and save that. So this should go to the previous slide. So let's do this. Oh, it's not working here. And that's because, so right now we have it hard coded in here. This slides, it's just set to the first object in our array here. So instead of having it hard coded, we actually want to jump to the current index. So what we can say is just current index. Okay. So current index is this salmon, which is this one right here, the last one. We should be able to go to the previous one, which is the pasta, then the sushi and the lobster, and it should start back over to the salmon. Hey, there we go. So let's just do the same thing for our next slide. So let's find our next slide here. And what we'll say here, const, if it's the last slide, how do we go to basically to the first slide, right? So we'll say the last slide's current index equal to slides.length -1. So what we'll say is const new index equal to is last slide. If this is true, then we'll say current index +1, and then we need to set the current index to the new index. Okay, so let's see here. This should go to, this is our sushi. It should then navigate to the pasta. There we go. And then to the salmon. And then this should start over at the current index of the lobster. Perfect. Okay, so there we have it, you guys. Now, it'd be nice to have some buttons down there, some icons, so we can actually jump through to that specific index. So let's go ahead and add that in right now. So what we're going to have here, let's go ahead and so let's see here. Let's go ahead and add a function. We'll have a go to slide function. So we'll say const go to slide, just like so. And it's actually going to take in an argument here, and we're just going to say slide index, because that's what we want to pass through. And we'll just set the current index to that specific index. So we'll say set current index to slide index, just like so. So we don't have any icons down there, and we actually want to be able to map through however many objects are in an array. That's how many buttons or icons we need to display. So let's just scroll down here. So just below our right button here, let's give us some room. What we'll say here is, let's create a div, and let's see, we'll say, I'm going to give this a class. We want this to display just below our image right here. So what we'll say is flex, we'll say top 4, justify center, then a py of 2, give it a little bit of padding. Now, what we want here, let's say, map through our slides, .map, and then what we want to map through, we'll say slide, and then also the slide index. And then we want to render something out on the screen here. And since we're rendering something out, we're not going to be using curly brackets, but we're going to be using parentheses. And what we want to render out is this rx.filled icon. So let's make sure we import that here. So we'll say import. And then again, it has to be on a new line. Since it's from a different package here, we'll say React icons. It's not BS, but it's RX. Okay. So where were we? Down here. So you can actually see our icons there. Hey, there we go. And if we see, as there are 4 icons. Now, if we were just to, let's just double this here. I'm just going to copy it down. So now we have 8. We should then see, since we're mapping through each object in our array, you now see 8 buttons. But let's just move this back down there. So that's kind of cool, right? But how do we make it to where whenever we click on on that specific icon in the order, it goes to that array? So for example, the first item in the array is the lobster. If we click on that first button, then I want to see the lobster image. So what we're going to say here, let's actually put this in we'll put this in a div in here. So I'm going to have a div here, and I'm just going to move this on up right there. And for this div, what we're going to say here, I'm going to give it a class name. And in here, we'll say text 2XL, kind of beef it up just a little bit. We'll say cursor pointer. That way, whenever we hover on this, we can actually see it. There we go. Now, let's add this. We'll add it right here. So what we're going to add, we need a key here. You don't have to, but React strongly recommends that if you map through array, whether it be objects or whatever it may be, React strongly encourages you to set a keys. So what we'll just say is key here, and for our key, we can just say slide index, just like so. Now let's have an on click. So whenever we click, it'll go to that current slide index. So we already have our go to slide function here. And since we're mapping through, whenever we click on this, each key has a specific index. So whenever we click on this, it's just going to go with that specific index of that key. So what we'll say is on click, and we can just add in this function right here. We'll say, whoops, we'll just say go to slide, and we'll say the slide, pass in the slide index. So let's go ahead and save that. Now the first object in our array is the lobster. So if we click on this, we should see our lobster. Hey, there we go. Then let's go back to the salmon, which is the last one. Then we have the pasta, which is number 3, and the sushi, which is number 2. Hey, there we go. So smash the like button, you guys, if you're getting some value out of this. I hope you are. So that concludes our image slider. So now let's wrap this thing up and give this thing a footer. And again, let's just make sure this thing is fully responsive. I don't want to have any surprises at the end. So there you go. Look at that, you guys. Looking pretty good so far. Leave me a comment down below if you like what we're doing here. And right there, boom. And you can make this bigger, you guys, if you want to add, if you want to make it, we define the widths here, the width or the height, sorry. We said it was 580. If you want to make this, a little bit bigger, you can do that as well. And everything, we made the background images to cover, and everything is fully responsive as well. So as you can see, you might have to change, as you see, their overlap whenever we change there. So you might have to change that, but we'll just leave that as is. So 580, everything's looking good there. Okay, perfect. All right, you guys. So let's wrap this thing up with the footer. Okay, so let's go create a new component here. What was a component? We'll say footer.jsx. Okay, so refce is going to generate our functional component. Now we're going to be using some React icons down here. So I'm going to import a few. I'm going to grab the FA Facebook, an FA Instagram, an FA Twitter, and let's go ahead and import those from React icons-fa. And let's do this again. We'll import TI social Pinterest from, we'll say React-icons/TI. Okay, so here we go. So now we have access to all of our icons that we're going to be using, and let's make sure we can import, we'll say footer, and we'll import footer from components/footer.jsx. Okay, there we go. All right, so next we have our footer down there. Footer, perfect. So next, what we want to do, we can close that. So for our footer, let's go ahead and let's see here. So we're going to have a div here, and inside this div, it's going to be kind of our parent container. This is the parent container here, and then what we're going to have is it's going to be displayed with grid, and we're going to have a bunch of grids down here. See 4 and 5, probably 5, and this one's going to span across 2. So let's go ahead and do that now. So this one, let's see here. We'll say a div, and then we're going to create another div here. And I'm going to have an H6 here that says solutions. There we go. Then under here, we're going to have an unordered list. And in here, we'll say travel. And I'm going to copy this down a few times here. We'll have, see, booking. We'll have flights. And we'll have cruises. And we'll say just ground, just like that. Perfect. Now I'm going to copy this down. Let's see here. Underneath this div, I'm going to create another div. We'll have an unordered list again in the H6. And this one's going to be support. And then for our support, we'll have a, actually, I'm going to move this above our on order list. Then in here, we'll have our list items. And for our report, we'll say about, or sorry, we'll say this one's going to be pricing. We'll have a documentation. Documentation. Then we'll have a tours and a refunds there. Let's go ahead and save that. Perfect. Now let's just copy this down again. And this one, I'll just say company. And for this here, we'll have an about, we'll have a blog, we'll have a jobs, we'll have a press, and we'll make one more. This says partners. Perfect, perfect. All right, you guys. And let's just do one more. So we're gonna have 4 down there, and we'll have, so this last one will be, we'll say legal. And then for our legal, we want we'll say claims. Privacy. Feel free to skip through, you guys, or just copy this code. I'll put a link to the GitHub down below. Policies, and we'll say conditions. There we go. Okay. So, and then let's have our last div is just going to be this little search box down there. So we're going to put that right below this here. Create another div. We'll have a p tag that says subscribe to our newsletter. There we go. And then we'll have another p tag, and we'll just say the latest deals, articles, and resources sent to your inbox weekly. There we go. Okay, okay. And then let's just have a little form with an input in there. So we'll add that form. We'll say form. And we don't need an action, so I'm not actually going to submit anywhere. We'll say input, type of email. There we go. And let's give it a placeholder. Placeholder is going to be, we'll say enter email. There we go. All right, all right. And then just below the form, or sorry, just below the input, we'll have a button. And let's give this, say subscribe. Let's see what we're doing down here. Hey, there we go. Perfect. And you see, we already have some baseline styles on there. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and give this button a few more styles. We'll say class name. Oh, claims. Say class name. We'll say P-2, margin bottom 4, rounded medium. There we go. Perfect, perfect. Let's change that. Looks good. Okay, so underneath the form, let's just add in this little section down there, and then we'll style everything. Okay, so for this div down here, let's create we're going to create another div, and then we'll have a p tag in here that says 2022 experiences LLC. There we go. We'll say all rights reserved. Hey, there we go. Okay. And then let's have a div with our icons in there. So I'm gonna create another div, and we'll have our, let's see, our FA Facebook in there. There we go. We'll have a FA Instagram, and we'll have a FA Twitter, and then we'll have our FA, or well, sorry, this one's TI Social Pinterest. Hey, there we go. Okay, you guys. So let's go in. Looks good. So let's just style this thing. Okay. So let's start off at the very top here. So with this parent div, we give it a class name, and we'll give our width of full. It's going to take up the full width of the screen. Then we're going to have a container within it. So padding top of 24, we'll say BG gray 900. And the guys, the colors on Tailwind goes from 100 to 900. Doesn't go up to 1,000. Doesn't go to 50. Goes 100. This is the lightest of that color, as you can barely see. 900 would be the darker of this color, darkest. So we'll say text. Whoops. We'll say text gray of 300. Padding on the y-axis of 2, and then px of 2 as well. So there you go. We have our little padding there. So let's actually give a container so this kind of sits within there. Okay, so let's do that next. Let's give this a class name. I'm going to shrink that down a little bit. So class name, and we'll say max width of 1400 pixels. There we go. We'll say MX auto. We want this to be displayed as grid. We'll say grid columns 2. anything, we're at some media queries here. Okay, so anything above the medium breakpoint, because at smallest screens, we just want 2 columns. So right now we have 4, 5, and 6. As you can see, 4, and then this is containing 2 columns. But as we shrink down, it's just 2 columns. So what we're saying, and like I said, Tailwind is a mobile first approach in the way that we write CSS. So on this, at the very base, it's going to be 2 columns. Then anything above the medium breakpoint is when we'll say grid columns of 6. Then we'll say a border bottom of 2, say border gray 600, so we can see it, PY of 8, and then we'll say PX 4. Okay. So let's see what we're doing there. So as you can see, everything is broken down just like we want it. There we go. And our media queries are looking good. Perfect, you guys. Perfect. And there is, you can see our container as well. Okay. Perfect. All right, you guys. So let's move on here. So for this div, we actually don't need any classes here. And for our H6, I'm actually just going to type here on multiple lines. Again, I'm just holding down this Option button. I'm on a Mac here. Not sure what it'd be if you're on Windows. Sorry. So let's go ahead and give these a class name here. Whoops, class name, and what we're going to say is font bold, uppercase, and PT2. There we go. Perfect. Looking good. And you also there's a capitalized keyword as well if you want to use that for your CSS as well. So perfect. Everything's looking good there. And so next, let's add these P1s here. And again, I guess I could have just add this base style of PY. I'm not sure if I'm using, I can't remember if I'm using any other list items in here. So instead of adding global styling now at the end of the project, I can't remember what I have done. So this would be a good way we could just say, inside of our global styling, you could just add in to a list item, could have a class name of PY1, and that would kind of save you the trouble of doing all of this, which really wasn't that bad since we can type on multiple lines at the same time. So next, let's come down here for this div. So we actually want this one to span across, right now we're at 2. So what we want to say for this div, let's give it a class name. And like I said, we want it to say column span 2. There it goes. Perfect. And then we'll say padding on the top of 2 rem, which is 8. Then anything above medium, we just want to say padding top 2. So there we go. All right. So this P tag here, I'm going to give it a class name. And for this P tag, I'll say font bold. I want it to be uppercase. And then this text here, we'll say class name. Let's just give it a little bit of padding on the y-axis there. Perfect. Cool. So next, let's style our form here. So we'll say on our form, let's give our form a class name. And for our form, we'll say flex column. Anything above small, we'll say flex row. Okay. So now whenever we boom, that looks good. There's our breakpoint right there. Okay. Looking good there. Now on our input, we should probably give this input a class name as well. And for our input, we'll say width dash full P2, so we can get a little padding on our input. MR force or margin right. And we'll say rounded MD, margin on the bottom of 4. There you go. How about that? Looking good so far. Everything is looking great, you guys. So for the button, we already styled the button. So next is just this div here. Give it a class name here, and we'll say flex. We want to say flex column here. There we go. And what we'll say is a max width of, let's say 1400 pixels. We might go a little bit smaller. I think we've been doing 1400. We'll say PX of 2, PY of 4, MX auto. We'll say justify between. Anything above small, let's display as a flex row. We'll say text center, then text gray 500. Okay. Hey, there it goes. Looking good. Now for this P tag here, let's just say, give it a little bit of padding. We'll say PY4. There we go. Now for our icons, we want these to display as flex. So we'll say class name, we'll say flex. We want to display justify between so we can kind of spread them out here. We'll say anything above small. Let's give it a width of, we'll say 300. Because if we look right now, if we open it up, that looks good right there. That icon's super tiny. Let's give this a size property of, all right, that looks better there. Now, if we open this up, we want these to, it looks good at small devices. That looks good, but let's change this to justify between, now we'll say anything above small. Since we have our breakpoints, we'll say, let's give it a 300 pixel padding top. We'll say padding top of 4. We'll say text to Excel. Oh, and there we go. Okay. So there we go, you guys. That looks good. So let's open this up. Let's shrink it down, make sure everything adjusts properly. And there we have our little breakpoint for our mobile icons. There you guys. So let's go up here, cycle through our images. Should go to the first image, the last image. We don't see the black opacity until we hover. Have some grid here, some grid masonry layouts here. If we open this up, everything is fully responsive, you guys. All right, smash that like button, you guys. That concludes today's build. I hope you got some value out of this. Please leave me a comment if you did, or if you need help with anything, please leave me a comment down below and I'll try and get to it. So thanks for watching, you guys. I'll see you on the next one.